Welcome everyone to Mary's School of Prophecy. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of these end times. And this is another special program in my series on end times prophecy. And I want to talk about Dana Coverstone's latest dream, because I am afraid he has lost his charism from the Holy Spirit. And instead, he is receiving dreams from Satan. And I predicted that this would happen because he received many true dreams. And I interpreted them. And I told you they were true dreams. But the last dream he received before the Who Are You dream, which was about 6 to 8 weeks ago, he did not release it. He received a dream which he said he had a problem with. Well, it's not his job to interpret his dreams. And he has admitted, he and Sherry Goff, who interprets his dreams, that his dreams are for the people. And it would be like Daniel interpreting his dreams, and if he didn't like them, that he wouldn't publish them. Fortunately, Daniel did not do that. I think Dana is named after Daniel. In any event, he refused to publish that dream, a mystery dream. And after that, he got the Who Are You dream, which was a true dream, but it was directed at Dana. And that's where Jesus knocked on his door. And Dana did not say, "Come in." Dana said, "Who are you?" And that's the Who Are You dream. And finally, in the dream, Dana goes around to a side office to look and see who's knocking on his door, and he sees a white hand knocking on his door. Well, that was the man in white who represents Jesus in his dreams. And Dana did not understand that was the man in white. And in fact, he and Sherry Goff spent 25 minutes trying to convince people that the hand was evil. And he only spent 5 minutes giving the dream and 25 minutes trying to say it was evil. And I explained to you the meaning of that dream. And I said at the time, unless Dana Coverstone releases that mystery dream, his next dream is going to come from Satan, because Satan is going to jump into that vacuum. And I believe that this is his most recent dream, which he published about a week ago, and he calls it, let me see what he calls it here. He calls it the Towers, Trains, and Chains dream. And it sounds something like the dreams they used to get. You know, Satan is a great mimic. He knows how to imitate God. And in fact, I believe in Lourdes, famous Catholic revelation, when Mary appeared to St. Bernadette, there were many false apparitions at the same time where Satan imitated Mary appearing to St. Bernadette. And the church had to decide which were true and which were false. And I have determined that this latest one is false from Dana Coverstone, and and see if you don't agree with me. And he received this dream, the Towers, Trains, and Chains dream, on July 12th, 13th, 14th, 19th, 20, and 26. Notice the number of days? He received this dream over 6 days. That's not accidental. All we got to do now is to find 2 more 6s in this dream, and I think you will agree with me. We do find 2 more 6s, which of course gives us 666. And I don't think Satan wanted to reveal that. I think he wanted to stay hidden. But Almighty God has forced his hand in certain places in this dream. And he has to begrudgingly let us know that this dream is in fact comes from Satan. And I hope Dana Coverstone, I hope he releases that mystery dream and gets this monkey off his back. So let's begin. I'm going to go through this dream just as I did with his true dreams. I don't like to do it. It's depressing to read from words from Satan. Satan, as you know, likes to express himself in doggerel. He is not a poet. He's not creative. He's not original. Satan, for example, rap music comes from Satan. And it's what we used to call doggerel. It's not poetry. It's doggerel. Well, this dream is very much like that. So let's look at the first part, starting out with part 1 of Dana Coverstone's Towers, Trains, and Chains dream. The dream began with a large auction on the field where the Washington Senators were playing. There was no one in the stands, and the lights were off, and the stadium was very, very dark. The auctioneer was masked, not like a COVID mask. It was just his face had like a bandana around, so you couldn't see. He was also wearing a judge's robe, and those about to participate were all nationalities, with a corresponding flag of their nation on their jackets. And I think we will see that what is being auctioned off in this dream is the United States of America. That's what's being auctioned off. And I think Satan would be happy to show that. So far you can't say this dream comes from God. And notice that this is in a very dark stadium. Well, that Satan operates out of the realm of darkness. I don't think that's surprising. Notice that the people are wearing masks, and Dana correctly shows that means they're criminals. And it's interesting that Dana Coverstone evidently doesn't know much about baseball, to his credit, because the Washington Senators no longer exist. I'm sure he means the Washington Nationals. They do play baseball in Washington, D.C. The Senators used to be a very lowly team. Maybe that's accident. Maybe it's supposed to be the Senators. The Senators were a very low-down team. And here goes the train by right during the right during my program. Can you hear the train in the background? I'm going to have to just cool it for a minute. There goes the train. It went by about 3 minutes ago. I says, good, that's over with. Anyway, we'll just assume that's an exclamation point on this video. So now there is one thing true about this first scene, and that is that all the nations of the world will come against America. And we know that from George Washington's vision. If you remember, George Washington had a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary. A beautiful woman, he called her. He did not recognize her as Mary, just as Kim Clement didn't recognize that Esther in his dream represented Mary. But now in George Washington's vision, even though all the nations of the world come against America, and America is in dire straits, as America is in this dream from Dana, an angel saves America. There's no angel in Dana Coverstone's dream to save America. And that's because, as I say, I believe this comes from Satan. And after all, he's going to orchestrate this war on America. And he wants to leave the impression that we don't have any recourse. This is a depressing dream. America really is going to be defeated. And no angel is going to save us, according to this dream from Satan. See if you don't agree with me that this is not from God, this particular dream. Okay, let's look at the next part. So they were professionally dressed, sitting in some very nice chairs right in the middle of the field that wasn't being played on at that time. They also had their jackets up around their necks, and it seemed to be an attempt to shield their identity, even though the stadium was empty and dark. As the auction started, and the auctioneer was getting people in place, saying, hey folks, we're about to start, several of the Asian nations gathered together and talked among themselves. So it would appear that both the auctioneer and the participants, the bidders, are criminals. They're hiding their identity. They're wearing masks. And I get the idea that the Asians are depicted as the bad guy in this dream. And I wonder if Satan isn't trying to stir up a little anti-Asian prejudice in this dream. Satan loves antipathy between the races. He stirs it up all the time through his media in this country. And Dana made a kind of strange interpretation there. He seems to think that, of course, he thinks that the dream comes from God, and he seems to think that America may be justified in opposing Asians. But if you understand that this dream comes from Satan, you'll know that he is trying to stir up a little hatred. Okay, let's look at the next part of this dream from Dana Coverstone. Then they held up a card with a symbol I had never seen before, and I'll express that in just a little bit. A strange symbol on it, and it got the attention of the auctioneer. And the minute he saw it, he declared the auction was over. And a large briefcase was handed by these Asian nation leaders to the auctioneer, and he accepted the briefcase and shook the hands of 12 different men. There were 12 different specific men, all of Asian backgrounds. And then he snapped his fingers and he yelled out the word now. Not loud, just now. At the same time, he snapped his fingers, he said, now. So did you catch the other 2 sixes? 12 breaks down into 2 sixes. That's the 3 sixes. The 6 dreams and the 12 men gives you 666. I don't think Satan wanted to reveal that he was giving this dream. So he hid it as much as possible, and Dana did not catch it. But God forced his hand. He forced the 666 to be revealed here one way or another. And that's the meaning of the 12 men. It's interesting that Dana said he would reveal later the meaning of the mysterious symbol. He never got back to it. I've watched that. I've watched his program several times, and unless he goes through it real fast and I missed it, he never did explain what that mysterious symbol was. And I would not be surprised if it was some kind of a Freemason symbol, for example. In any event, it represents evil. Okay, let's look at the next section of Dana's dream. Then I was watching a hurricane-like storm that grew in great strength, and it flowed from near Indonesia and the Asian waters over there near Japan, China, Taiwan, and it was like a hurricane. It was growing in power and strength, and it rumbled and spread all the way across the Pacific Ocean, and it became green as it hit the west coast shoreline of the United States of America. And then the storm became like a huge blanket of rain, and it just spread out like you spilled a cup, and the water just spilled over the entire top of the United States of America. So I think this is, again, another depiction of the destruction of America. But now, it comes from all of these Asian nations. Is this more prejudice on the part of Satan? What bothers me is that all of these non-communist nations, like now he didn't say Philippines here, but he says it later on, Indonesia, Japan, China, Taiwan, he mixes up communist nations and non-communist nations. That's typical of Satan, to muddy the waters. But in any event, all the nations come from Asia. But what destroys the United States in the book of Revelation? It's not some kind of a flood from Asian nations. It's the scarlet beast that destroys the harlot. The scarlet beast is all communism. It's not these other nations. I mean, all the nations of the world do come against America, but it is the communism, it is the tyranny that attacks America. And I think that Satan, he loves to muddy true prophecy, and that's what he's doing here. He is lumping all of these Asian nations together. That increases prejudice against Asian nations, but at the same time muddies the prophecy that it will be the scarlet beast that destroys America. Okay, let's look at the next section. And it kept moving east, and it kept churning all the way. It was moving like floodwaters, like rampant floodwaters that are moving logs and buildings and cars. It was like a flood, like we saw with flooding that we may have seen in recent history. And it kept churning all the way across the nation. And the rain then resulted in flooding, as I said. It began to wash away the interstate. And the asphalt almost seemed like it was melting. And when the storm got to Washington, D.C., it became a tornado. And it drilled into the ground of the city. And then suddenly, the rain stopped, and the sun came out. Well, it's kind of an interesting image. Asphalt melting from rain. I don't know where Satan came up with that one, but again, more destruction of the United States. After the rain, the sun comes out, and it's quite sudden. It's quite unusual, but it's not unusual in Dana Coverstone's dreams. In the snake chain dream, the same thing occurs. Remember the spring, there's a sudden spring shower, and then the sun comes out? That was a timestamp in that particular dream. In fact, in this dream, Satan has borrowed quite a few elements from other of Dana Coverstone's dreams. And that's, I'm sure, to give it credibility. Satan is not an original thinker. He copies. He's a plagiarist. So I'm not surprised that this particular scene where the rain suddenly stops, I mean, you have tornado and hurricane, and then suddenly the sun comes out. That's appeared before in the snake chain dream. Okay, let's look at the next part. So all of this storm turns into a tornado that drills, literally drills, and just removes the ground in Washington, D.C. The sun comes out. And then I saw the tails, not the heads, of hundreds and maybe even thousands of snakes. And they were disappearing into that huge hole in the ground. And then the earth began to fill in from the bottom up. So the snakes go in, then the ground fills itself up, almost like it was sand shifting, but it was moving up and became level with everything else. Now, snakes, of course, refer to demons. We all know that in the Bible. But it's interesting that in the snake chain dream, the snakes come out of the holes in the ground, and they become, the roots are bloodied, and the snakes go out and they form chains, and they enslave all of the states. And it appears to me that Satan is copying another aspect of Dana Coverstone's previous dreams, although he probably would not like to have us believe about the snakes turning into chains, because that was the point of the snake chain dream, that America will be enslaved by these snakes and chains. Let's look at the next part of the dream. Then I saw America had dried up, but the interstate system was now replaced with dirt roads. So all the water damage, all the mud is now dry, so to speak. And all the interstates are just now where the interstate asphalt was. There's now just dry ground. It's not wet. It's not muddy yet. But I also saw that the ground level had a skin on it, and the surface of the concentric boundaries of the United States of America began to be rolled up. In other words, if you think about it this way, if you've ever used a key to open a sardine can, and you twist it, and you roll it, and the metal is rolling like this, I began to see that the ground level skin was curling, and it was curling from the east coast toward the west, and it was rolling. So I think what we see here is the infrastructure of America being destroyed. Again, this evidently comes from the Far Eastern nations, supposedly. I don't think in real life that's where it's going to come from. And I have interpreted this as being that the surface of America, the skin, represents the middle America, I guess you could say, perhaps the moral fiber of America. And of course, Satan would love that to happen. Let's look at the next part. The ground was still attached, but the skin was rolling, excuse me, like this, like something was rolling it. And then I began to see underneath the dirt roads. And now I'm looking below the surface of the earth, and it looked like trains that were almost like a monorail. There were like tracks that were hanging on the bottom of the earth if you were looking up underground. And there were like trains, like a monorail that was pulling. It had a large monorail, and the engines appeared to be, basically this engine appeared like a monorail, like a train, and a large train engine, then other units behind it. and it appeared to be very large and one long unit. Now, Dana explains elsewhere that these trains were very powerful. Notice that they are underground. The auction was in the dark. These trains are underground. They have a big role to play. I believe these trains represent demons, just like the snakes. And the demons are close to hell. That's why they're underground, in my opinion. Let's look at the next part of the stream. And it was pulling an even longer single-unit vehicle. And behind that was a chain, a very large chain. And the chain was attached to the east coast and the roots in the ground there. And so as those trains began to move west underneath the ground, I began to see the east coast just began to curl, almost like a chain was pulling. And as it was pulling, the surface of the ground was going with it. And they simply rolled up as a curl as the train was pulling on them. So these powerful train demons are going to destroy the fabric of America. At least that's how I see this imagery. And notice in this section that the chain was attached to the east coast and the roots in the ground there. Well, that's a copy of the snake chain dream. Listen, the chain is attached to the roots, and that was exactly the same way as in the snake chain dream. As I say, Satan is not too original. He's not known as an original thinker. Okay, let's look at the next section. And as the trains pull west, I also saw that there were towers going up. And these towers looked like prison guard towers over the area of the nation. So as soon as the skin of America and the United States of America was curled over and kept going west, these towers would just simply pop up like guard towers. And I also realized that the red soil was now muddy, and it was red. Where the skin was being pulled up, the ground was now red, not just dirt, it was red and it was muddy. And it stretched across the face of the entire country. And where the capitals had been, there were towers with bright, flashing yellow and blue lights. So now we've got red mud, again, very similar to the snake chain dream. Remember, the blood came out of the roots of the soil and covered America in blood. Very similar. It's also interesting that in this passage we have the three primary colors. You have the red mud and the blue and the yellow lights. Well, it's kind of interesting because, as I have often mentioned on this program, the three primary colors, just like the three primary shapes, the three states of matter, etc., they represent the Trinity. I'm not sure if that's why Satan included those three colors, but it could be. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe he wanted to give his dream a little credibility. Okay, let's look at the next part. And where Washington stood, the Capitol building and the White House had a fence around them that appeared to be about 50 feet high, and there was razor wire attached top to bottom. It wasn't strung like this, horizontal. It was strung like this, vertical. Razor wire 50 feet high around those walls on the outside of them. And also I saw that in the towers there were bags of white and yellow fleas. Not black-colored fleas, white and yellow fleas. And these bags were being emptied around the towers, and these insects began spreading through the entire region. Well, the insects, they're also demonic. And we know in the book of Revelation, there is a star that falls that released the plague of locusts. Well, that star happened to be Martin Luther. Again, Dana makes a comment on these fleas being yellow and white. He seems to think this is racist, and he mentions that there aren't any black fleas or brown fleas. He only saw white and yellow. I think Satan is trying to stir up a little anti-Asian prejudice here. It's interesting that what is it that's 50 feet high? Mention that. Oh, yeah, the barbed wire protecting the Capitol is 50 feet high. Now, that's a reference to Mary's rosary. So why would Satan refer to Mary's rosary? I mean, he knows full well that's what will defeat him. Well, he doesn't have a choice in that. I mean, God is telling us that Mary's rosary, in this case, is protecting the Capitol and the White House. And Dana Coverstone does not understand that. Incidentally, it's kind of strange. He did not have Sherry Goff interpret his dream this time. He did it himself. He said they both agreed that it would be dangerous for them to do so. Maybe because of all this reference to the Asians. I don't know. He seemed to think that was the problem. It's interesting that there is so much demonic power in this dream. God still requires that we get that number 50 in there to let us know, the rest of us, even if Dana doesn't know it, that Mary's rosary is what will defeat all these demonic forces. Okay, let's look at the next section. And the train chains continued to pull until the surface level of the nation popped off as it got to California. As it just kind of rolled like this, it finally snapped, and that skin began to float. And it floated up towards the sun, basically just like Icarus, if you're familiar with the mythological story of Icarus. It kept flying higher and higher up towards the sun that was at full brightness now. And as it floated up like this, the coasts, east and west coast, both began to burn, and then it faded away. If you've ever seen flash paper, I was a children's pastor for many years and used flash paper. And you light it, and it just disappears. That was what this was like. It got close to the sun, and it just burned and disappeared. Well, that's interesting. So Satan seems to think that the sun is going to burn America. Well, of course, that's not true. We know that the destruction of America is not a pagan myth. It's not about Icarus. I think I pronounced that right. In the book of Revelation, America is burned by the scarlet beast. I think Satan is trying to muddy that prophecy. He wants to ameliorate it. He doesn't want us to understand that America is not going to be burned by the sun. It's going to be burned by the scarlet beast, and that is true prophecy. Okay, let's look at the next section of Dana's dream. And again, I saw the chairs, excuse me, again I saw the chains continue to stretch over the Pacific. And they were basically moving on the ocean floor. Those trains kept pulling, and they were still pulling chains attached to this nation. And they kept pulling them, dragging them towards the Far East nations. And that was when the man that I see so often appeared in the middle of the empty baseball stadium. And he spoke very, very softly. In the dream, I actually had to lean in to hear him, what he was saying. Now, Satan added this man in white in order to give credibility to his dream. He knows that the man in white represents Jesus, but he had him speak very softly. He didn't want to give him too much authority. Now, in the next paragraph, the man in white says that we don't have to worry about the red dragon. As Paul Begley would say, what? Are you serious? The red dragon in the book of Revelation is Satan. That's a pretty good indication that the man in white here is standing in for Satan rather than Jesus. So let's read this next part, which is really very interesting. This is the conclusion of the dream. Excuse me. And he said, don't worry about the red dragon, as the red dragon has worse enemies than it knows. And the spirit of Antichrist walks the earth and whispers in the ears of the kings at the moment. He is tempting their pride, taunting their power, and they are laying the tracks for the train of deception to pull the world into his grip. Look up, for your redemption draws near. But warn the shallow fervently that deep roots are needed now more than ever. Brace, endure, prepare, and use the time you have to reach the rootless ones. It's kind of interesting that Dana Coverstone has to interpret all this. And that's because who are the enemies that the red dragon has? The red dragon only has one enemy. That's Mary. Mary is going to crush his head. Satan, again, is muddying the prophecy of the Bible by saying that it has worse enemies than it knows. He wants to make it seem as if it's not one enemy. It's plural enemies. He only has one enemy. Now, the part about the Antichrist whispering in the king's ears, that's true. That is going on right now. So why would Satan mention that? Well, he's bragging. Satan is bragging that the Antichrist is whispering in people's ears. It's interesting that Dana Coverstone at this point says that's obviously not from God. Talking about the Antichrist whispering in his ears. If you watch Dana Coverstone's dream, his explanation of the dream, it sounds like he's talking about the dream itself. And that's what he is talking about. He doesn't even know it. It's the dream that's not from God. Now, it's interesting that he quotes the Bible. He says, "Look up, for your redemption draws near." But we know that Satan knows how to quote the Bible. And why doesn't he leave it there? Why doesn't he say your redemption draws near? That would be a positive conclusion to the dream. Jesus is returning. We know that. He doesn't leave it there. Why doesn't Satan leave it there? He only gives that quote to give a little credibility. Now, what does he say next? And Dana Coverstone has to interpret the last two parts of this dream to make it sound like this dream comes from God, but it doesn't. But here's what he says. He says, deep roots are needed now more than ever. This is Satan talking, the man in white. And Dana says that this is a reference to Ephesians chapter 3, verse 17. So let me read that verse. That Christ might dwell by faith in your hearts, that being rooted and founded in charity. That's what Ephesians 3:17 is. But that's not what the man in white said. He did not reference St. Paul. He did not mention anything about charity. He says, deep roots are needed. Why doesn't Dana Coverstone think that he may be referring back to the roots in the first part of the dream? The roots that go deep in the earth in Washington, D.C. The roots in the snake chain dream that are bloody. Those are the roots that Satan is talking about. Dana, in order to make it seem as this dream comes from God, tries to make it seem as if he's talking about Ephesians, and he's not. And then Dana, let me see what Dana says next. He says that the rootless ones, this is at the end part. Let me see what he says here. About the rootless ones, he says, brace, endure, prepare, and use the time you have to reach the rootless ones. But here's what Dana says the rootless ones refer to. He says that refers to, let me get this right, Colossians chapter 2, verse number 7. Well, here's what Colossians says. Let me read that. I've got that here. Okay, rooted and built up in him, referring to Jesus, and confirmed in the faith, as also you have learned, abounding in him in thanksgiving. But that's not what the man in white is talking about. Again, he's talking about the bloody roots, the roots in the first part of this dream. But Dana has to interpret it that way to make it sound as if it's coming from our Lord. And it's interesting in this, his explanation. Dana Coverstone relates. He spends 9 minutes relating the dream and 22 minutes interpreting the dream. And the only conclusion I can think of is that I think Dana understands that there's something wrong with this dream. It seems on the surface like his previous dreams, which were from the Lord. I believe Dana Coverstone was a true prophet. Jeremiah says in the end times there would be some true prophets. Jesus said there would be many false prophets. And I'm afraid that Dana Coverstone has abandoned his true calling and accepted a dream from Satan as if it came from God. And he does this all for one reason. He does not want to reveal his mystery dream. I suspect, and it's becoming more and more obvious to me, that the mystery dream reveals that Mary will save America. And he does not want to say that. He probably realizes that that would be the end of his evangelical ministry if he said that. I think Kim Clement understood that with his prophecy about Esther. He could not reveal who Esther was. I mean, he may not have even known who Esther was. And but I suspect that in the mystery dream, Dana does understand it, and he realizes that he can't have it. He would lose his thousands of people watching his videos every day. He posts videos on YouTube, and he does not want to lose that. So he has compromised himself and accepted a dream from Satan, tried to make it sound like it came from God, and to me, it clearly does not come from God. In any event, that is my interpretation. I would be interested in what all of you have to say about it. I would like to be convinced otherwise. I would like to have somebody convince me that this dream does come from Almighty God. And I'm sure you can point certain parts out of it that seem to come from God, and Satan, he'll give you 90% the truth if he can get in his lies. And I think overall, there's a feeling of hopelessness in this dream, which is exactly what Satan would like to depict. He does not want you to know how he will be defeated. Okay, everybody, let's take a quick look and see what everybody else has to say. I'm not sure if the chat has to do with this, because Pray153 says she's missing an adapter for our speaker. You know, Pray153, I do consider these things to be serious programs. But to answer your question, I have not seen any adapter around here, and I have looked, but I will look again. Have you asked Sam Fisher? He had more electronic equipment here than I did, and maybe he put it in with his stuff. So I would recommend that you ask Sam. Pray153 says, after unpacking, I still have not found it. Well, it's got to be somewhere. So I will look around. It may be here. I've been working last 3 or 4 days on this decode of Dana Coverstone's dreams, so I have not really had a chance to take a good look at it. Bruce Pollard says, I offer my prayers to all of those on the WFRN and to my deceased wife and to my deceased son and girlfriend, and especially for the holy souls in purgatory. M. White says, wow. I'm not sure why M. White says wow, but that's okay. Uncle Jalapeno says, I just finished watching the new Dana Coverstone dream. I'm interested in your interpretation. So what do you think, Uncle Jalapeno? Uncle Jalapeno is our resident Protestant. I don't know what denomination he belongs to. Dana Coverstone is, I believe, evangelical, which I believe is what Kim Clement was. But remember, Protestants make the best Catholics when they convert. And I ought to know because my mother was raised a Methodist. Maria Pandurai. Jerry G is here. Rita Esslinger says, William, I didn't bother watching DC's video before watching this. I am looking forward to some gem comments to leave for him on YouTube. Well, if they're real gem comments and you tell him that his dream came from Satan, he's not going to publish it. But if you want to, I know I commented on his other dream, and he blocked my comments. So he doesn't want to know the truth. It's too bad, because he was a true prophet. I'm trying to wonder, is there any place in the Old Testament where a true prophet gives up his mantle and starts prophesying falsely? I mean, there are many false prophets in the Old Testament. We know that Solomon lost his charism, which was to be king of Israel, because he wanted to please all of the women in his harem, and he worshipped their gods and goddesses. JMJ says, he's in a spiritual warfare. The U.S. is in a revolutionary war. JMJ says, Satan's dream? Yeah, I think it was. Curb Stomp is here. Curb is somebody new, I think. Welcome aboard, Curb. Check out my rosary tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. That reminds me, for those of you who may be new, Here's my address so you can contact me. William Tapley, Post Office Box 291, Osage, Iowa 50461. And in case you would like my books, where I talk about prophecy, as I've been on YouTube for 13 years. This month, 13 years. Oh, last month. The Holy Spirit Guide to End Times Prophecy. There are 4 volumes, and you can order these on my thirdeaglemedia.com website. There should be a link below. Click on the newsletter tab, and under the July newsletter is an order form. And if you would like to read the books ahead of time, you can find them under the transcript tab. Let's see. Curb stop. Oh, all of his messages were deleted by Tina. What did he say? I didn't think the first one was so bad. Looks like he must have been a real troll, huh, Tina? Oh my goodness, look at all these comments. Well, Tina, you're on the job. I can see that. So, I have no idea what he said. Curb stop. The first one I read didn't seem too bad. Okay. Uncle Jalapeno says, I didn't catch the 3 6s the first time I watched it. Great job. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I don't think any of his other dreams were spread out over 6 days like that. And the first time, when you mentioned it right away, 6 days, I said, oh, that's not a good sign. And then when I read the number 12, that's a very important number. There are only 2 numbers, 12 and 50. I think those are the only 2 numbers. 12 is 666, and the rest of the other 6. And, of course, 50 follows 666. And that means that Mary defeats the Antichrist. So the Lord had to include both that numerology in this dream. Satan had no choice but to put that in there. Shots Lee is here. Marie Nolan. Karen Herrera says, I heard somewhere that Dubai is calling a lot of the shots or will be so. So it doesn't surprise me about other nations, Asian nations, gathering to make decisions. Well, I don't think Dubai is Asian. Dana Coverstone specifically mentioned Indonesia, Japan, China, Taiwan, and the Philippines. And as I say, he lumped those all together, which does not sound prophetic, as if it came from the Lord, in my opinion. Quest to the Unknown says, hi, brothers and sisters in Christ, Yahusha, judgment reward for the wicked is here. Yes, that's at the very end. The wicked will be judged. No doubt about that. Let me see. JMJ says, yes, you are correct, Curb. Pope Francis is Wormwood, the false prophet. He will cause 1/3 of the waters to be bitter. Many have died of the waters. So Curb Stomp must have been talking about Pope Francis. He doesn't realize that we consider Pope Francis also a false prophet. Let's see. Quest to the Unknown says Adama means red soil. Oh, I didn't know that. Or maybe I've heard that. I don't think that's what this prophecy is talking about, but it could be. Well, thanks for that, Quest. JCN, good news is here. Hello, blessing. JCN, he's been on my channel for many, many, many years. Then he dropped out for a couple of years, and now I think he's back again. Uncle Jalapeno says, I thought that the racist fleece statement was odd. Yeah, me too. And that was Dana Coverstone that offered that. He said that was a racist comment. But in a way, I think he's correct. I think Satan was trying to stir up some anti-Asian animosity there. Let's see. Pray153 says, please watch Natural News. The final warning. August 6th, a senator signed internment camps for those who refuse to get the vax. The military will put you into death camps. Well, it's getting to be that way. And we're very close to the mark of the beast. I mean, that's going to be a characteristic of the mark. Ms. Tree 13 says, towers, razor wire, sounds like that old YouTube elephant video. Pet goat, too. Oh, yeah, I think that is in there. You're right. Now that you mention that, Ms. Tree, I think you're new on here, too, so. Welcome aboard. If you want to say the rosary with us, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., we pray a live rosary on this channel. 10 a.m. Eastern. Quest to Unknown says 50 means Jubilee. And that's right, every 50 years Israel had a jubilee, a year of celebration. And of course, 50 means 50 Hail Marys in a 5-decade mystery. That's also the height of the scaffold in the book of Esther, which hangs Haman, who symbolizes the Antichrist. The scaffold is 50 cubits high. Tina Sislo reminds me of the Vatican, whose colors are white and yellow. Oh, that's a good point, Tina. I didn't think about that. You're right. The white fleas, the yellow fleas. Interesting. You're right. Those are the Vatican colors. Pray 153 says, just want to say that Scott and Kyle may have been right, because if you don't take the shot, signed Executive Order 83, you will go into an internment camp. Well, I don't know what they're right about. They said that the warning would occur when? Last Thursday or something? Pray 153 says, please do not tell anyone you did not get the shot, or you will end up hunted down. Well, we haven't reached that point yet. Right now, you can still get a religious exemption, but you notice that the Cardinal Dolan and the Pope is not going to give you any religious exemptions. So we are between a rock and a hard place, no doubt about that. Let's see. Pray 153 says, the health ranger says that they will call you on your phone to try to find out if you took the shot or not. If you do not lie, you will die. We're going to be protected, you know. I mean, John Leary says to be ready to go to your refuges. Have your bug out bag ready to go. I'm working on it. Let's see. Pray 153 says, naturally, vaccinated people do not have to be given a shot, just like smallpox. They rubbed it into the open wound. No vaccination necessary. Well, this is not really a vaccine. What they are giving people, it's not actually a vaccine. Pray 153 says, we don't want all the people who are ready to die. We want them to live, to repopulate the earth when the other people are dead. Yeah, I know it. So don't take the shot. And if they force it on us, get ready to flee. Jesus said to flee. He said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel standing in the holy place, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and so on. He gives 4 different possibilities, and they all involve flight. You don't stay and fight these people. They've been given the earth. God has given them the earth, mainly to convict them. We don't want a leader who says, oh, if you had made me president of the United States, I would have saved my soul. God says, okay, here you are. You can now be president of the United States. Let's see what you will do. And that's true. All the kings of the earth are sons of Haman. Let's see. Quest says, Far East is where the Son of Man came from. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Let's see. Indiana says the red dragon could be China, or the evil one. It's possible. I thought of that. The red dragon in the Bible is not China. The red dragon is Satan in the Bible. We know that. It's possible that in prophecy, the red dragon could be China. Maybe that's what the red dragon in this dream refers to, but I don't think so. Oh, Indiana explains that. I just didn't go quite far enough. Thanks, Indy. You said that exactly what I just said. Let's see. Where are we here? Full Strength says, how can someone discern? Discern what? You mean prophecy like this? You have to pray about it a lot, I'll tell you right now. I don't think any of Dana's followers understood that the dream came from Satan. And Dana works very hard to try to make it seem as if it came from God. Quest says, it was not Esther who delivered the Hebrews, but it is he, the Holy One of Israel, indeed. Well, Israel is part of the chain. Esther is part of the chain of command. The physical contact, as I've said if you watch my program, Quest, you'll know there's never any physical contact between King Ahasuerus and Haman. King Ahasuerus does represent Jesus. Esther represents Mary. But there's physical contact between Esther and Haman, but not between Ahasuerus and Haman. Read the book of Esther very carefully. And that is the same as Genesis 3:15. where God puts enmity between you and the woman. And she crushes the head of the serpent. That's where the physical contact is. And that's the same way in the book of Esther. And when Kim Clement says that it's Esther who is going to save America, he is correct. And America, the people must say yes to Esther. And in that prophecy of Kim Clement, the people do shout out. He has his congregation shout out, yes to Esther. And how many times did they shout it out? They shouted it out 15 times. That's not accidental. That's 5 plus 5 plus 5. And if you watch the very first video I posted on YouTube 13 years ago, July 31st, the meaning of the number 666, you will find that even Jesus teaches that in the Olivet Discourse, that the number which defeats 666 is 555. Let me see. Snowland says, I feel that Dana is prideful on the dreams if he has an issue on the other dream. Well, up until now, I think that Dana was very humble when he gave his other dreams. He let other people interpret them. But you're right. Lately, he has become very defensive. And I think he realizes that he is in deep trouble. He's got to choose. He can't hide that mystery dream. He's got to release it. Otherwise, he's going to keep getting fooled. Where are we? We have quite a few new people here. DR Daily, I think you're new on here. I never thought Coverstone had it. Too much fear porn. That's not of God. Well, there's a lot of fear porn, but a lot of it's true. I mean, read the book of Revelation. You don't think the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are fear porn? And that's from God. Dina Sislo says, Alex Jones warned years ago about the internment and death camps. Curb Stomp says, AG is a watchman, I believe. Well, there's one that Curb Stomp got through here. I believe in that. I believe AG is a watchman. AJ. Are you sure Curb Stomp was that bad, Tina? Oh, let's see. Tina has hid Curb Stomp, and then she unhid him. Okay. Well, see, this was not too bad. I don't think he's that bad. I'll have to look and see what his other comments were. Curb Stomp. I am not the moderator on this channel. I have appointed Tina. She's one of 3 moderators, so you've got to make her happy. Curb Stomp says, AJ is a watchman. I agree with that. Full Strength says, I would just change churches till I got what I wanted. Well, that's the Protestant view. Why do you think there are 30,000 Protestant denominations? Because any time a Protestant didn't like the denomination he was in, he started his own. Let's see. Quest says, New York Governor Cuomo removed. California Governor Newsom worried due to recall. Well, I guarantee they're only going to be replaced by worse people. Let's see. Curb Stomp says, God cast Lucifer out of heaven onto the earth. You're right. The world belongs to Lucifer at this time. See, I agree with Curb. Curb says, where do we flee to? Well, you have to flee Babylon. I didn't complete what he said. You have to, Daniel, he gives 4 types of flight there. But John in the book of Revelation says you must come out from Babylon if you want to avoid her plagues. And these plagues are striking America right now, one after the other, very clearly. So you have to know the 4 locations of Babylon. As I've gone over this many times on this program, you have to leave all 4 of Babylon's locations. SM says, are there unknown nanocomputer particles in the jab? Well, I've heard that. Francisco Tristan says, some got a placebo. I'll bet the elites got placebos. Francisco's another new person on here, so welcome aboard. Lots of new people today. United Hearts says 7.1 earthquake in the Philippines area today, expecting 6 O's in the rebound areas. No kidding. Tina says that's what they say, SM. Okay. Nah, I'm not sure if there's nanoparticles in the jab, but everybody I know has said don't take it. Certainly, by the way, speaking of religious exemption, I'll bet you any amount of money that the Amish do not take the jab. But they have more faith than our current PF, the FP, Pope Francis the False Prophet. Youngblood Let's see what Youngblood says. I have to show this. Youngblood says the Catholic Charities are bringing in 1,000 illegals every night. They are part of our destruction. Oh, well, sure. They're following Francis. Francis is Wormwood. Digital Marcus says, what are 4 Babylon cities are? No, I didn't say that. I said Babylon has 4 locations. And that's the geographical location is just one of them. I'm not going to go through all of the 4 locations of Babylon. I've done it 1,000 times on here. I'm going to go on my channel and look under the playlist. I have probably 30, 40 different playlists on my channel, and I talk about the 4 locations of Babylon. Or type in on YouTube, Mystery Babylon's 4 locations. Type that in. You should come up with my channel. They're not cities. Mystery Babylon has 4 different locations. One geographical location is just one of them. She has a geopolitical location, a mental location, a spiritual location, geographical location. You have to leave all 4 of Babylon's locations. John says to come out from her. Don't listen to false prophets who claim that Babylon is the Catholic Church. That's a joke. Curbstomp says there is aborted fetal tissue in the jab. That's enough for me to stay away. I agree with that, Curbstomp. That's enough for me to stay away. Not enough for Pope Francis to stay away, but for you and me, yes. I agree with that 100%. JMJ says, yep, we have no border. Yep, America is borderless. Yeah, but I didn't comment on Youngblood. You're right, Catholic Charities. I don't know if it's 1,000 every day, but they're working hand in glove with the Biden administration. That's where they get a lot of money from. Quest says, what does plasma infusion of man mean? Well, I don't know, but if you go try Googling that, you might get an answer. Then again, you might not. Well, everybody, this program could go on for more than an hour, and I don't like it too, so we're going to call it a day, and if anyone has any other questions, you can tune in tomorrow. Like I say, I'm on here every day of the week. At 10 a.m., we pray a live stream rosary, and I do like these live streams, and I like the comments that everyone makes. And there's not too much to talk about Dana Coverstone's dream. That's what I was hoping for, but in any event, yes, if you have some comments now, you can go over and see if Dana Coverstone will let you tell him that his dream came from Satan. I don't think he'll be too happy with that. But I think I gave some pretty good evidence, so until I see all of you again tomorrow, same time. Well, I shouldn't say same time. That's my usual closing. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. And don't forget Sam Fisher. I believe he will be back. He was in the hospital yesterday. Hopefully he will be back tonight. Let's see, in an hour from now, right? Yeah, less than an hour. Sam Fisher will be doing a live stream rosary on his Piata Rosary channel. And I will be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, for another live stream rosary. Until I see all of you then, may God bless all of you, and may all of you have a very blessed evening.